everyone. Welcome to our 5th TeachClimate Network meeting of the year. We are going to be discussing the book Weather Woman, which we will discuss for sure, this cover, which I'm dying to hear everybody's thoughts on that too. Actually, I think Devarty just emailed me, so just hold tight. Let me see what's going on with her. She might be on the wrong call. 1 second. Well, if we want to start real quick, if anybody just wants to give their 2 cents and kind of overview on the book, and then we can go back and kind of give a...
Well, you mentioned the cover, and because I had the advanced reader's copy and the actual cover was like a postage stamp, I didn't spend any time on it all. So now I'm looking at this tiny version going, what's going on there?
Yeah, here's the...
Yeah, I can see it.
Any thoughts on the cover? I don't want to get too nitpicky, but it was something that I noticed right away when I started reading it.
There's Devarty.
Hey, Devarty.
Oh,
I was just getting started, and I wanted to know what people thought of the cover.
the physics are all wrong.
Personally, I just don't like. For me, this book there was so much power behind Bronwyn, and so much for her to like figure out about herself, that I just don't feel like this cover does justice to that. There's another version of the cover that you can see if you Google search, of her standing in front, and there's a tornado in the background. It's like, why didn't they use that? Because it just felt like it was so much more powerful and so much more connected to the book. But anyways, details. I do have a couple of quotes and kind of information from the author, Kai Emmons, who we had tried to get to be on the call, but just schedules didn't work out.
Dang.
Yeah, it would have been really fun. I had talked with her publisher a little bit. She's actually in Denver, I think, somewhere in Colorado tonight, giving a talk. But there was just one review of the book that I just wanted to read. He is this guy, Jason Box, is a glaciologist and climatologist, dubbed the Ice Maverick by Rolling Stone, and just had a really interesting perspective on the book. So maybe this will sum up a little bit. Bronwyn, the central character in Kai Emmons' novel Weather Woman, comes face to face with extreme weather, fire, ice, and the complex social psychology of climate change discourse. As a TV meteorologist, she is pressed to lighten up and spin the weather in feel-good ways, reflecting the mainstream media's tendency to deny the inconvenient challenge of climate change. The Siberian tundra is brought into focus, and throughout the novel, the writing allows us to feel the emotional intensity that comes with connecting with the wild power of nature. Obviously, as an organization that focuses on climate change, that was the lens that I was reading this book through. And so I really felt that was an interesting review of the book. But yeah, would love to hear others' thoughts.
Well, I made note of things throughout the book that jumped out at me that were real live experiences from my life as a meteorologist, that compared to the flow of the fiction part of the book, there were these very well done, truthful phrases that just jumped out, and I could tell they were picked up from conversations with her science experts that she interviewed, and she got a lot of them right. And so I made a list of those, plus I made a list of like 30 vocabulary words that challenged me that I was not familiar with. I'm like, wow, this is not my normal vocabulary. And so I had fun being exposed to a whole lot of new words that I intend to work on incorporating.
Awesome. I kind of felt similar. My second major in college was meteorology. I had an internship at a local news station, and so that part of her life, really spoke to me. And I was geeking out at a lot of the topics they were talking about around broadcast meteorology and just around the vocab related to forecasting and such. So that was really fun to kind of relive that part of my life.
And the only part that spoke to me was when she wants to leave grad school and go. I was like, yep, yes, totally. And she even has 2 male colleagues in her lab who are doubting her all the time. And then she doesn't do anything about it. It's like, yes, right. I would have taken a job anywhere.
Yeah, there was that early mention of a competitive grad school environment at MIT. I was like, yeah, that's a thing.
Yes, I did. So I am writing the reflection this time. So the very first thing that I wrote about was not from the lens of climate, but I connected it towards the end, but I said about linearity, because when you're in grad school, that's the narrative that your mentors put forward, and you live with that. Then you go to grad school, then you go to, being a researcher or being that straight line narrative. So, and that's what she was kind of seeing it that way, and her mentor too, that okay, she's a bright student, let's get her in the grad program, then she'll become a researcher, we'll do this research together. But Bronwyn continued to, as a character, disrupted that idea of linearity, that it doesn't have to be this way. I mean, I will go explore this job, and then through the job, then when she starts recognizing her powers, then she wants to explore that. So as women, I think more of these narratives should be out there in storytelling and sharing that not having a linearity is okay. I think growing up and in grad school, this was not okay. A gap year on your resume was a big question mark that you should be prepared to explain.
Right.
So that was one thing that I wrote about, is that linearity and disrupting that thought or that prominent idea of linearity, especially for women.
Yeah, I feel like it's becoming, much more normal, to not have that linearity and not, stay at the same job forever and not, take the path that was laid out by your family or something, for both males and females, but for sure females.
Yes, it is. I mean, I am so relieved that this has happened. I'm relieved for my children that they do not have to follow this, but so that I enjoyed that very much. And then
great observation.
Well, I noticed you notice what you go through, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that was my first paragraph. And then adding to the feminist, not undertones, but feminist component of this character, I also said that as much as she struggles with knowing or learning how she's getting these powers, what these powers are, and how she can use them, so does everyone around her. As to even the guy who reporter guy who hangs out with her, like he doesn't know what his role is till the very end, when they're sitting and it comes to him that I'm the buffer between this very logical person and this intuitive person. So even he doesn't know how to be an ally. and the mentor struggles how to be an ally to this leader person who has the abilities to become a leader, a contributor to change. So that's something that I feel is true of women leaders. If the people around them want to help them, they don't know how to help them. And so the leadership only goes as far as the women themselves they can perceive. It doesn't go beyond that. So that's what I noted.
I nominate you to write all the blogs, Deborah.
No, it's honestly, that's how I feel. I mean, we just got a dean in natural resources here. Just got a dean. And how long has this institution been here? It was so surprising to me. There's so many women here for around doing great work, and after so many years, we have one dean. So you wonder why women don't go up ahead, or take leadership positions, because it's, I don't know, nobody just directly says no to them, but it's also not a very directly laid path, right? It has some challenges built in. So maybe people don't know how to be an ally. They just think being quiet is also being an ally, which I don't know. So this guy in the story, he was always like, fine, she goes away and he's fine. He's just there. And at first it's enough that he's there, but then it's not enough. Like he has to evolve too, to be able to let her use her powers. So if that doesn't happen in the story until the last moment when he gets like aha, that's what I'm supposed to. So it's interesting.
It is. It's such an interesting perspective, and both of those things are not things that I thought about while reading the book, and it's such an interesting perspective, and it's why I love doing this book club, to get multiple perspectives. When we read these books, we all have our own lens on, we all have our own past experiences, and so it's all going to be different.
One of the phrases that just stood out to me that relates a little bit to the things you've brought up is that I only wrote down the phrase. It was on page 271, and the phrase was outside the camaraderie of men. And that little phrase was so loaded for me that I just made a note of it, going, I've never put those thoughts together that way for something that one observes and at times experiences. And I just wanted to remember it. Did anyone else, did that jump out at you?
Not that phrase, but it was right there. I mean, it's a very true scenario. I could put faces to the men in the lab who make fun of, or who just doubt your abilities, and you're in the meeting and you're talking, and then suddenly you need to repeat what you just said. Why were you not listening? Why do I need to repeat? I wasn't mumbling. So those things stay with me. Have stayed with me. And today, I mean, I'm very cautious and observant of where I am, who is supporting my ideas, and I try to now cautiously repeat what my female colleagues are saying so that it is echoed throughout the room and the meeting. But without these techniques, your voice just fades away. It doesn't reach to decision making at all. So
I feel so lucky because I feel like my voice is heard most of the time. Occasionally, of course, I've experienced that, but I guess I feel really fortunate.
No, then you have to hold on to it, because maybe that gives me hope. And two, that is a model then. That is a model of who supports you. how they support you, and how you have obtained that support. So
I'll echo you, Wendy. I feel pretty lucky. I mean, I work in an organization that has 11 women and 1 man, and it is phenomenal, the amount of support that we are able to give each other, the respect that we give each other, the way that we're able to lift each other up and be there for each other is, I don't think it would be replicable in any other situation. You know, I will never see this again in any job that I have. You know.
So why not you should hire me then? I am backing up.
That would be awesome.
Unless Sarah and Betsy have other opinions for me to go.
Yeah, Sarah, Betsy, you want to weigh in?
Well, we have a big College of Science lecture series where they fill the auditorium with all these different scientists on different topics. And this year, the topic is uncertainty. So it's all these different scientists, but the key feature is all of them in the lecture series this year are women. And the College of Science dean just, announced it on Tuesday night and said, well, they all happen to be women, but they're not here because of that. They're here because they're the best. Mm-hmm. So I'll work at the UA.
Put that on your list, Marty.
Huh?
Put that on your list.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, come over here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But, yeah, one of the things that struck me in the book was at the end there, like the whole time they were in Siberia, there was a lot of weird things going on. And, one of the things was the geoengineering there basically we're talking about was, keeping the permafrost frozen. And I know that's always a big thing right now is, what do we do with the permafrost? That's a big thing. And then with geoengineering, what else are we going to be affecting? So one of those, that struck me. And then the whole idea that she couldn't get the data from that one weather station and how she could just look at that data and understand it. And it's really much more complicated than just looking at a few data sets, because that any atmospheric data is crazy. So that seemed
there were numerous things. While there were all these credible parts, there were a lot of things that I was worried that a layperson reading this book, it would play to their fears that scientists like to manipulate data. And I mean, even having that as a theme running through there, or that, it's a common thing that we hoard data or play those kind of political games with it. And it's so not common in global atmospheric science enterprise. It just didn't set the right tone. And then, like you said, fundamentally everything about weather modification, whether it was her ability to do it or it was scientific, again, it's just a really strange part of atmospheric science in general. And so I was scratching my head a lot going, cli-fi, 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 don't get caught up in
But I'm thinking about that, initially she's changing the weather, and then after that's, okay, what kind of impact do I have? If I change this one thing, where's the fallout later on? And, when she went to Oklahoma with the tornadoes, I'm going, oh my goodness, is this going to be like a domino or something like a butterfly effect or whatever, where you fix something here, but it's going to just be compounded somewhere else. And I think that's what they tried to get across then with after she left and the tornado was coming through again. And
I thought that was handled real well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think they talked about a little bit too with the fire, and then
then make it rain, and then all of a sudden downpours.
Yeah. California has that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff is real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wrote for this part that the theme for me was conflict. Is like going into it, I thought it'd be more conflicting for me, this part, like it was for you. But then surprisingly, I wasn't. So first I thought, like, okay, in the past 3-4 years of having kids, there's lots of powers that have gone away from me. And one of them is for being surprised about things. Maybe that's what it is that I'm not responding to it. But then I realized that maybe I had one question here that maybe it is her expertise, so the author starts in the story that Bronwyn was always in touch with elements of nature, even as a child. And she studied and trained in weather and earth sciences. So then maybe it was her expertise of the discipline that when she got her powers, or they began to develop, she was able to identify them because she knew about these phenomena. So like Sarah said that butterfly effect. And if I got the power and I did something, I wouldn't know it would be a butterfly effect, right? I don't have that knowledge. So maybe then I thought, okay, so then if I were to set up an experiment, then I would provide the same power to a person who's a very, very knowledgeable about weather and climate, and then give the same power to the person who's not. So wondering if they would feel it the same way. But anyway, and then I said, well, so finally I said, maybe I also wonder if the powers were acquired by someone who wasn't a climate expert, would they still be able to recognize them and use much as them as Bronwyn did? Would they know that what elements they need to influence to make a significant change in climate? Or would they just be happy if I was just make fog and be happy about it?
That's a good point. I feel like, yeah, I mean, the way the book was written, the way the story progresses is that she has a knowledge base.
Yes.
And that's talked about and that's referenced every time that she kind of goes into this trance or kind of becomes one with the atmosphere. So yeah, I feel like it definitely has something to do, with her background. And actually this page that I printed out was this interview with the author.
Yes.
The question was, what prompted you to write this character who controls the weather? And she said, I grew up in New England where weather can change on a dime. I sometimes felt the bad weather was my fault, and I wish I could change it. I would look at the clouds and imagine myself changing it. Eventually, this longing gave rise to a character who really could change the weather.
There you go. I mean, and she did her research, and she made the character having the knowledge about weather. But no, I would, if the power came to me, would do nothing with it other than make fog.
Sorry, I can't come to work today. It's very foggy.
I know the gentleman that was one of her expert consultants, Dr. Bob Robber, is a colleague of mine.
Oh, nice.
And I intend to follow up with him and find out what it was like being consulted for on this book.
That's
because
cool.
Oh, that'd be fascinating.
Some of the, well, actually, many of the really geeky things I could just hear him say. And I feel like those are things she cherry-picked from her conversation with him.
That's cool. So, Devarti, when you said you could make fog, there's Carl the Fog that has his own Twitter account, and it's the fog in San Francisco. So you can follow Carl the Fog. It's pretty humorous.
Fog, Carl the Fog.
Carl the Fog with a K, I think. Carl the Fog.
That is so fun. That is fun. But I didn't write this, but a thought did come across my mind that I would be more accepting of a weather woman acquiring powers than I am of that there's a car around in Lincoln that person drives that talks about body wraps, and then you detox and you lose body fat. So and the person is running a business. So I think when I thought about it, so I'd be more accepting of the weather woman helping to fight climate change, and instead of questioning where her abilities come from or whether they're valid or not, I would just figure out a way to incorporate in whatever way I am doing, whatever things we were doing, and it'd be much more easier for me. Now, there's that person drives around, runs a business, right? Body fat, you get a wrap and you become thin.
That's hilarious.
She lives somewhere here. She's got a really huge...
Oh, I'm sure they're all over the place. That's actually interesting. So there's, if your book, I don't know, Wendy, if that advanced reader copy has questions, but in the back of the book, there was some book clubbed questions.
I don't think I have those.
Okay. Well, there was just a few of them, and I just picked out a couple of them, and one of them kind of has to do with what you're talking about here, Devarty. It says the novel portrays people who understand the world in different ways. Diane understands the world through the lens of science, Earl through the lens of religion, while Bronwyn understands things intuitively. What are the advantages and limitations of each of these models of understanding, and how does this relate to climate change?
Yes, all Earl's people were so thankful to Bronwyn. They'd never even questioned her powers. And I did write a sentence about it. It's like they were suffering. They didn't wonder or question who helped them. They just took the help. Or was it a valid help or not? So and I could see that happening in a poor country if farmers are losing their fields or if their fishery occupation because of rising waters, they would be equally acceptable of an engineering solution as well as a person going in and doing some prayers. They would be equally thankful for both of them, and they would not question at all as which one brought results, right?
Right. So, and you would think that that's, unfortunately going to be happening more and more, and you would hope that those that are going into these communities, are there for good, regardless of kind of the lens they have on, and not to, take advantage of said population. But yeah, no, it's a really good point.
So
climate change is talked about a handful of times, but it's not, like the theme. But it's, it's a woven concept, throughout the book.
I think that if I didn't know that we were a cli-fi focused conversation group, I think that the turn it took towards climate at the end would have been a bit more of a surprise to me. I kind of expected it because otherwise I didn't think we'd be reading it, but it was so weather focused, and I'm so weather focused that I would have just been thinking that all the way. Climate was mentioned one time pretty early
when she started
her weather report.
Yeah.
And it jumped out at me as going, eventually we'll get back there, right? But again, I think I only maybe had that thought because I knew we must be headed there.
Yeah, I definitely looked at that piece because I know that's real life. Meteorologists a lot of meteorologists in the past have not been allowed to talk about it through their networks, and that's changing. But yeah, I started keeping track of some of the climate change. I guess, again, it wasn't explicit, but because that was my lens, I would write in the margins like, oh yeah, that's climate change.
I guess scientifically, it's such a big thought to think about any power manipulating the weather, because even weather mod, where these big experiments have been designed to do it, it's really tough to tell in most instances what the effect is, if any. And obviously it's fiction, but to think of a single individual being able to do how it's described that Bronwyn interacts at a molecular level. And from the weather perspective, you can begin to wrap your head around that in this imaginative way. But when it went into climate, I was really unsure how to imagine that happening, if that makes any sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
weather was one thing, but climate, it was so much bigger and so much more intricate. And I was really going, am I going to get mad at this book? But then
That's okay.
it is okay. But then I felt like it sort of dissolved itself there by saying it was too big, and she realized it. I was like, oh, good. Because
that it was fighting against her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or what was it? Wasn't responding, or I don't remember, something with when she was
Initially,
out in the tundra. Yeah.
yeah.
It exhausted her. She couldn't make us. Well, it's not clear that she make a change, or was she able to do anything. You wouldn't know, because after Diane being in there, you would yourself want to see that data, right? That's how we would get the evidence that yes, she did make a significant change, and that part, it ends. So
Yeah, and there was a part in there that talked about, well, she makes the change, but nobody knows about it or whatnot. Then the community is going to say, haha, told you it was all a fluke or whatnot. And I went, you know what? This is too big for her to make. This needs to come. This change is a worldwide thing. It can't just be one person, and then we see this change, because it won't be looked at from the way it actually did happen. It would be taken misconceptions from that. So.
Yeah.
So for this part, I thought it was symbolic. Symbolic in the sense that we all know that this is we call this phenomena as global climate change. So we all know that it's bigger than a single person. We also know about its complexity. We understand, as those of us involved in climate literacy understand, that for a layperson, a person on the street, it's very difficult to comprehend when we say this is a global phenomena, but you can make a change if you change your habits. And it becomes, it's layers and layers of complexity for a person on the street to wrap their head around. If I didn't do anything wrong, well, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing this. Find the person who's doing this, and then make them get rid of their big car, not me. So I think this in a very not so clear way, that she as a person tries to make a change, but she can't. So it is something that first everyone has to come together. However, the power that she has as an individual is not non-significant. You shouldn't be ignoring it, because she can make some change. But for it to be a significant global change, everyone has to come together.
So, she can have a change on the weather events, but not every weather event. She can't be everywhere, but her small difference did make an impact. I think that's a good relationship to our fight with climate, and that, yes, you are just one person, but you just being one person can start doing something, and then think of all the people that are going to see you doing that as well, and spread that around. Go, oh, well, that they're doing that, I can do that too. That's not hard or anything like that. So yeah, we are just one person, but individual things do make a difference.
Yes.
And that idea of, like you were just saying, Sarah, like taking those individual actions and sharing them and making them collective, or, helping your neighbors, do those same things, and talking about the reasons behind them. Like, yes, it's good for the planet and humanity and less carbon and whatever, but hey, it's going to save you money, which is especially,
and that's a personal gain just in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's been some articles the last couple months that have come out that are saying, like, no, individual actions are still very important. We can't not think about that stuff, but yeah, it's like, how do we take those individual actions and share them and, make them a bigger deal, and ratchet things up and spread the news, etc. Any other thoughts about this one?
Well, since we are all women and we've talked about some of the feminism aspects of the book, how did it strike you all that early in the book, I thought out of place rape was brought up, and then later a situation where there's a scientist that is described as indiscretions with students, which is certainly another problem we face. Did you find that in place in the book or out of place? Did it add to the interest or was it distracting? Because I'm conflicted.
It didn't. It was just like, I don't know. It was like, okay. And then I moved on with the story. So it kind of distracted me, but then I was like, okay. And then I moved on. It didn't stay long with me, but I know where it was because now you mention it. I noticed it, but I didn't think a lot about it. I moved on. I was like, okay, you got it.
I moved on from the early comment about rape, just thinking that it's so interesting she chose to bring that up here. It was fairly early on.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the Me Too era, looping back to describing a scientist, male with power, known for indiscretions with students, and the way that was described, I just thought, is it much? I mean, clearly it was deliberately included, and included without judgment. It was just a statement like this was something that happened, which it is something that most people in the field know some situation about,
Mm-hmm.
or have experienced themselves. I just thought, I guess I assumed the author was just trying to describe the world realistically that Bronwyn was in.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But for me, I found it a little hard that I guess just because those are nerves for so many people right now, that it was done without judgment. You know? It was just like, and this happened.
And yes, that's how I noticed it. Like, okay. And then we moved on with our story, you know? So it didn't make me pause and reflect a lot on it. Yep.
I read this over the summer, and then I just got about halfway through it over the last couple weeks, and I felt like I was reading fast, so I don't recall when those things were discussed. But yeah, it does seem maybe without a lot of context, or, you know, like you're saying, without remorse or you know, whatever you're getting, talking about, is that it doesn't fit maybe, and maybe it wasn't the best choice. But
yeah, well, I'm uncertain how I feel about it too, but I did notice them, and I wondered what the purpose of including them was.
mm-hmm.
Was it descriptive or awareness raising or all of the, I don't know.
Was it that one guy that was at lunch that time that they were talking about, or?
Yeah, that was the indiscretions with students guy.
Yeah.
They had the younger woman with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was the other instance? Because I don't remember.
Really early on.
Was it with
Make
Bronwyn?
note of the page number. There was a description, just like a statement of fact about a female known to Bronwyn having been raped related to the science community. And I didn't dwell on it because I was really in the book and just getting into it. But I was like, really? Gonna just throw in a rape in the mix. Okay.
Interesting.
It was like a bad spice in the moment. I'm sorry, I don't remember the page number or the exact detail, but
next time I'm getting the paper version. I'm not doing the the digital book
Well,
anymore.
if you have the digital version, you can search on the word.
Now I got it on Hoopla, so that's why I had to read it, because it goes away on Hoopla. So I'm not doing that. It's a digital library thing. So, and it took away my notes, but for once I was cautious enough to keep a Word document.
Oh, good.
Oh, we have an app through our local library that we can rent digital books, and it's great for books like that I'm just reading just to read and don't need to take notes on. But yeah, I would much prefer. Plus, you need to smell the book. This one doesn't smell very good. I mean, it's not bad, but I love the smell of books.
Next time, not doing this, not listening to Marie Kondo either. Sorry.
Because you want the book to take notes in, or because you're frustrated with her? This is necessary.
I want the books to take notes in.
Okay, good.
I'm not
like that woman is very intelligent.
No, I don't doubt her intelligence. I am not gonna listen to her in this one thing.
All right.
Irrespective of the whole thing.
If y'all haven't read her book, I highly suggest it. I have KonMari to my house, and it works.
I did a little bit. I did it too. I went through the kitchen and bathroom. So do you all know the KonMari thing? KonMari. This is a Japanese lady, and she wrote a book about the KonMari method of organization, which is where you only keep the things that truly bring you joy, and then you get rid of other things. So there she must have the book, but yeah. So she just there it is. Yeah. And she just got her Netflix show too. So she has a show on Netflix, and women, it's like it's most watched. But anyway, so I thought I would depend less and less on paper versions. Paper seems to be my biggest enemy. It collects everything.
You need to have the paper version because you take notes and you underline things.
So I depended more on digital books now. But
I can't read those when I'm driving.
It's true.
So I have an audiobook for the
I'm like you, Sarah. I do a lot of audiobooks, especially when I get stuck in traffic like tonight. So.
You're more of an audio learner. You know, they work really well. I struggle not being able to see the words until like it won't soak in quite as well. But anyways, if you haven't, I highly suggest reading it. Or watching on Netflix.
Watch the show on Netflix, yes.
All right. So next month, we are going to be looking at South Pole Station by Ashley Shelby. She's actually a Minneapolis author. Potentially, she could be coming on board for our meeting. I have contacted her and actually been in touch with her a few months ago. But we'll see if she is able to come. Probably a lot like Weather Woman. It's definitely more of a book club sort of book. Weather Woman maybe in a upper level high school, maybe even women's studies or college level. Might be an okay book. South Pole Station definitely has a lot of mature content in it. So just be prepared for that. But it's very interesting book. Kristen and I have both read it, and she kind of goes back and forth. She's like, I like some parts of it a lot, and then other parts I just struggled with a lot. So I'll let you read it and see. But basically the main character, Cooper, gets a what is the National Science Foundation Artists and Writers Program. And so she gets this grant to be able to go study or paint and draw down in Antarctica, which seems odd. I doubt this is a real program, but
actually it is a real program.
Is it a program? Okay, because I know that
there is a lot of people at HEU that have created artwork and things like that they were presenting in poster sessions. So yeah, it's still a program, and people can apply and go down. I don't know if they winter over, like she's wintering over, but I don't think they winter over.
I know she did a lot of research, and I think has a relative or something that has been down to one of the stations in Antarctica. So some real well thought out and good research. But she gets down into this program and is doing some art down in Antarctica, and it's just about the culture of being at this station amongst the polies that are doing research or running the place, and the scientists that are doing the research down there. And then the climate change connection is that a climate change denier is given money and go down and do his own research. So that throws a wrench into everybody's time down there. So it's a good one. It's long, like Weather Woman. I should have spaced these two books apart a little bit, so it's kind of long, but I hope you like it. February 19th. It's a Tuesday night. So if you
I started reading the book, but I have to go to that lecture series class that night. So
okay.
Take it on a Tuesday.
Bummer.
I know.
But yeah, it is. Even if you can't come, give it a read. It's a good one, and I thought it was fun that she is a Minneapolis author. There's some Minneapolis context in there, which I thought was fun too. Of when she is before she leaves home. So her character is from Minnesota as well, which I thought was really fun. I just want to say real quick that one of our humanities modules that I've been talking about for months is actually going to be coming out the beginning of February. So this one is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and the ELA, social studies, science, and service learning lessons that go along with that. So we just got a proof back from our graphic designer on Tuesday. So super excited to get that finished up and get that into the hands of educators. So once that comes out, it'd be awesome for you to forward it on to those that you know.
Congratulations.
Congratulations on
yeah,
that.
super fun. The Long Walk to Water Companion will come out a month later. So in the next newsletter.